Hey everyone, this is Nitro. So in this video, I wanted to talk about what is coming up in the month of May with regards to banners, exclusive equipment, and 3C skills. So this video is going to cover everything that's coming up for this month. And I'm going to begin by covering, well, of course, the upcoming banners, as well as the exclusives that we're going to get and the 3C skills in detail. And in terms of the banners, I will go roughly into what's coming up in June, but keep in mind that I'm not going to go into any of this in detail. It's just to show you, what's coming up from I guess May to June. Okay. And other than this, I should also mention that this information is roughly from what we see on the Chinese servers. So it's very possible that Slong Games may change the order. They've done it before. For example, they recently just swapped the order of the Leonhard Rene banner and the Rachel banner. What was the Rachel banner? It was Rachel, Lana, and Tiaris, right? So the fact that they swapped that banner, they may very likely swap banners in the middle here as well. But roughly, this is what we can expect. So let's begin. So this week, Thursday, we're going to get the collaboration banner with Deedlit and Ashram. In addition to that, there should be another Secret Realm event with Parn and a login event for Pyrotes. Okay. Now, keep in mind that these two events may be pushed back until the following week, simply because there is currently the other event that's running with Trails in Time, second chapter, that is currently running. So they may push it back a week. We may also just get it to appear this week, but we just don't exactly know. But it should definitely be occurring, the events, long story short. Other than the two events, there's going to be 3C skills for 5 characters, which are Angelina, Langrisser, Lifney, Yusuke, and Juggler, and then exclusives for Leon and Lance. Okay. So I'll go into those in detail later in this video. Next up, next week will be a 3-character banner, so Destiny Summon or Focus banner. You're guaranteed to get a character that you don't have. And the 3 characters are Rainforce, Wilder, and Geralt and Layla. Now, this is not exactly a banner I 100% recommend people draw on, because this is much more of a PvP-oriented banner, right? Rainforce is a PvP-oriented character. Wilder is generally considered a PvP healer because Tiaris is better for PvE content in every way. And then Geralt and Layla is only useful primarily for Jormungandr in the Ancient Beckoning battles. But in the first place, you don't need Geralt and Layla for the Jormungandr battle. I don't have a Geralt and Layla built up, and I got S rank in Jormungandr. So that's just something to note. It's really, you want Geralt and Layla at 6 stars for Jormungandr if you're aiming for the absolute top score. But that's pretty much it. So as a result, I can't really recommend this banner to players who have started recently. Okay. It's really a banner meant more for players who are transitioning to play PvP and want Rainforce or Wilder. In my case, I'm going to draw on it because I'm guaranteed to get Rainforce since I already have Wilder and Geralt and Layla. Moving on. After that will be Zerda and Claret banner. Not much to say. I'm not going to draw on this one because I have Zerda at 6 stars and Claret is at 3 stars. Theoretically, if I draw on this banner, it would be to rapidly raise up Claret potentially. But I'm actually not that interested in building up a Claret at this point. So, pass. It's a shame, but I just can't afford to. And the reason I can't afford to is because of the Lodos War Equipment banner, with Shadow Armor, Bloody Death, Morningstar, and Witch's Dream. I'll go into these items in greater detail, but what I'm realizing is these equipment banners are incredibly important. At least if you're interested in PvP. So, after that equipment banner, it's already in June, and what we can expect for June, the first banner will be Juggler, Langrisser, and Yulia. Okay. In addition to that, because this banner is right before the next major update, there should be a Macho Lotto here. Not quite sure which one it will be, And finally, we may also get the Season 3 Yulia skin here, or if not here, we'll probably get it with the major update, right? So, a lot of things coming up in the next month, and we'll see which martial lotto we get. That's uncertain in large part because I think what they had for the Chinese server at this time was the Chinese New Year event. So the Chinese New Year event gave 2 skins that you can purchase, so I guess they skipped the martial lotto that week as a result. So, and then as for the Yulia skin we can expect to get for Season 3 would be the skin with her sitting on like a clock, right? It looks like this. Is this skin better than her default skin? It's kind of hard to say, but I personally like the skin, so I'll probably pick it up, assuming that it's reasonably priced, right? Most of, like, if it's 188 skin vouchers, I'll probably pass on this skin because it's not that much better than her default skin. But if it's cheaper than 188 skin vouchers, like 98 or 118 or something like that, then I'll probably pick up the skin. So, other than that, let's cover the exclusives, right? And the exclusives that are coming up for May are the following: Batch 13, Leon and Lance. Okay. I'll also go over Batch 14, which is the June ones, Gizaroff and Serena. Okay. So, the Leon and Lance, as always, with exclusive items that you purchase from the Secret Realm store, due to limited challenge points, you'll only really want to purchase exclusives for characters you actually use, right? And also, if the exclusive is actually good, of course. For example, one that is very, very debatable would be Rachel's exclusive, because it allows her to do fixed damage to an enemy in melee range, but honestly speaking, it's not that great, right? It has very limited effects in terms of actually winning a match, first of all, and second, you would have to use 3 epic martial spirits to build it up to level 50. So there are limitations to buying these exclusives. Alright, so Leon gets a blue dragon armor, which has the effect of, after taking damage, the unit can ignore terrain penalty for 1 turn. I'm pretty sure because it says after taking damage, presumably this kicks in even if you attack the enemy, right? Because when you attack, you will take damage. So if that is the case, it means that after your first attack, you can ignore terrain every single turn you attack enemies, which can make it very useful because it reduces your reliance on using Ulte Muller along with Leon. So it could be useful for both PvP and PvE content as a result. Lance gets a Crown of Kalsaf, which, as long as he's in the mixed force, his damage dealt is increased by 20%. I don't know anyone that uses Lance, so it is what it is. I mean, some people have said Lance is good because he does 30% increased attack against flyers and cavalry, right? And cavalry includes Landius. So some people say Lance can be quite powerful. I don't know. I don't plan on building Lance. I don't have the gold or resources to build Lance, so I'm absolutely going to skip the crown. As for Batch 14, the items are for Gizaroff and Serena. Gizaroff gets his exclusive weapon, and the effect of it is that after casting a skill, if there is a construct present, one renovation is randomly added to the construct. So pretty much a must build if you use Gizaroff. I'm definitely going to buy it in preparation because, we saw for Season 4 China playoffs that Gizaroff won the finals match for the person who used them. So if you do plan to build up a Gizaroff, this Scepter of Destruction will be very important. And the other item of Batch 14 is Serena's Dawn Guardian. The effect of it is that allies within 3 blocks of Serena who have less than 80% health are considered to have no soldiers. This sounds like a very weird effect, but what it actually means is, first of all, a 6-star Serena, if allies within 3 blocks of her have no soldiers, she guards them. Okay, so effectively what this Dawn Guardian means is as long as your allies are below 80% hit points, Serena will guard and protect those characters, which can be very, very useful. Serena is the only character that can actually guard at 3 range, but the assumption here is that your opponent did an AoE attack on your characters so that they were all weakened and knocked below 80% hit points. So in some ways you can say it can be very, very useful. In other ways you can say it's very, very useless, because if your opponent is aware of how Serena works, they're never going to AoE you, right? But if your opponent does not know how Serena works, then this item takes full advantage of that fact and allows Serena to guard characters at 3 range. So those are the exclusives that are coming up. And next, I'm going to be talking about the other SSR equipment, which is going to be released, which is the Lodos War equipment banner. And these items, there's 4 of them, which is an axe, Bloody Death, a cloth helmet, which is Witch's Dream, a light armor, which is Shadow Armor, and finally an accessory, which is Morningstar. Of these 4, there's 2 that are incredibly useful, which is Morningstar and Witch's Dream. The other 2, Shadow Armor and Bloody Death, are kind of whatever, can be great, can be skipped. So let's go over the 2 useful ones first, and then why the other 2 are not as useful. Starting off, I'm going to start off with the Morningstar Magic accessory. So this accessory increases attack and int, both stats, by 75. Its effect is attack and int are increased by 5%, and finally, before attacking, you deal fixed damage equals to 1 times the unit's lowest stat of either attack or int. And if the enemy is using mixed troops, this fixed damage cannot be immunized against. So, this is actually a very, very, very good accessory, because the fact that you're doing fixed damage to the enemy before combat means you're going to break things like last rites and make it much easier for your characters to one-shot the enemies in general, right? It buffs both attack and int, which means that any single target striker can use it. Whether it's a single target striker, whether it's Yulia or anyone who's a single target striker can use this accessory. So you're definitely going to want this accessory on pretty much every single target striker that you have. Okay. The character who absolutely really benefits from this, of course, is Sonya, because of the both attack and int increase. But like I said, every single target striker can use this. For example, Zerida, Omega, Illustrial, Yulia. The list goes on and on with single target strikers. And the fact that this really changes things up, because the fact that if the enemy is using mixed troops, you can't be immune to the fixed damage can be absolutely insane. For example, everyone currently uses Liana in her mage class, right? Well, I think everyone is going to have to change Liana to her holy class because of this effect, right? You're no longer going to want a mage class Liana, because otherwise she's going to be using shrine maidens with mixed troops, and that means you're going to get fixed damage before combat. Other characters who would be affected would be like, let's say, Omega, bringing Dark Elf Snipers, right? If you bring Dark Elf Snipers, then, well, you're going to get hit by fixed damage beforehand and have even higher chance of getting one shot. So, overall, just a very scary magic accessory. That's what this is. And can definitely be a game changer. The other one that's very, very good is the Witch's Dream, where life is increased by 10%, just like most helmets, but the more important effect is that after taking action, an adjacent ally is granted skill increase of 20%, immunity to heal reversal, which is like, for example, Listel and Sakura's debuff, and finally, unable to act again effects, which is, let's say, Leonhardt's debuff from Fusion Dark Emperor Sword, and this buff lasts for 1 turn. So, the skill increase can really benefit Omega. And although if you use it on Omega, Omega would not be able to use his mobility increasing skill, because that would end the buff effect of one turn. But it's also a protection against, as I said, Listel, protection against Leonhard. It's just an incredible helmet. The only drawback is that this is another helmet for Mage, Holy, and Demon class characters. So which character you give it to will be a challenge, right? Because now there's 3 useful helmets for Mages, Holies, and Demon class, right? There's the Soul Stealer headdress that can silence enemies. There's the Yggdrasil Reef. There is the Tenyos headdress that can provide one random buff to allies, which includes mobility buffs. And now there's also the Witch's Dream. So actually there's 4 useful helmets. So deciding which one to bring on which characters is going to be your biggest challenge with the Witch's Dream, actually. As for the 2 less useful ones, well, the Axe is Bloody Death, and the effect of it is that before actively dealing damage, if the enemy's hit points is below 100%, damage is increased by 5%, and after actively dealing damage, you deal fixed damage equals to 0.5 times at your attack. This is less useful because it only kicks in if the enemy is damaged, right? So, I mean, inherently, that makes it much less useful. Generally speaking, if an enemy is damaged, you're going to one-shot them. So I really don't see the point of this Bloody Death. Yeah. And then the light armor is for flyers, archers, aquatic, and assassin. The effect is, there's 2 separate effects to it. First of all, it increases your character's life by 10%. And second, defense is increased by 10% when unit hit points is above 50%, and magic defense is increased by 10% when unit hit points is below 50%. Kind of an odd effect, but what this armor effectively offers you is 10% life increase and 10% defense increase. That's what you can think of it as, right? Is this armor better than, let's say, Last Rites? Probably not, right? Last Rites reduces your damage by 40% as long as you're at full hit points. But this armor could potentially be useful for characters that don't have Last Rites. Like, I mean, I have 4 copies of Last Rites, right? That's not enough for every single flyer, archer, aquatic, and assassin character. So, you know, maybe, for example, giving this light armor to Juggler so that he has 10% defense and 10% life increase could be useful. Or giving it to Listel or whatever, right? So there are uses for this armor. It's not like it's useless, but I would say in general, Last Rites would be the better option if you have that many copies of that one. So that covers all the SSR equipment that are coming up. So ultimately, you know, because of the Witch's Dream and the Morningstar, and ideally you want as many copies of Morningstar as possible and several copies of Witch's Dream, I would say the Lodos War banner, the equipment banner, is where I'm probably going to be putting a lot of my tickets into. So rather than drawing for a 6-star Deedlit as soon as I can, I'm probably just trying to get 1 copy of Deedlit, you know, 1 copy of Rainforce, and then probably draw fairly hard on the Lodos War equipment banner, and then be ready for the Maya and Ares banner to get a copy of Ares. So that's roughly what I'm personally looking at for now. Alright, so finally, in this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 3C skills in brief, covering them. And it's not going to be detailed because this is more of an overview video. And the other thing is, this video has already gone on for pretty long. So let's bring up those 3C skills in Langrisser. And give me a moment to bring that up. Okay, so there we go. Alright, so what we have here is basically for every 3C skill, you're going to want to unlock it as long as you use the character, right? But this month's 3C skills, 3 of these characters are pretty much must builds because they're Apex Arena characters, right? Landius, Juggler, and Yusuke. The other 2 are more optional characters, so if you use them, you're going to get the 3C skill. If you don't use them, you're probably going to skip it. So Landius 3C is basically an upgraded guard skill, long story short. That's what it is, right? The passive effect is that he guards adjacent allies and he can no longer be displaced. So you can't ram or route him and push him back multiple blocks, right? The command effect of this skill is that all allies within 2 range gain a chance of being critically hit minus 30%, range damage taken reduced by 15%, and received healing effects are increased by 15%. So I believe that's actually an increase on Tranquility, right? Because Tranquility has the reduced crit hit chance and reduced range damage, but the improvement is that allies also now heal 15% more. And finally, of course, when you use it actively, your guard range is increased by 2, right? Command range is increased to 3, and enemies within 2 squares of you are actually unable to move again, and it lasts 3 turns. So yeah, basically an improved guard skill. You're absolutely going to unlock this and give it to Landius. Not much else to say. Next up is Juggler. So Juggler gets a new skill, Hymn of the Sacred Beast. 3 cost, 8 turn cooldown, and the range itself, span is single. So what this effect does is you teleport yourself to a square within range of the skill, and you gain the active effects of both Triton and Great Dragon Barrier, as well as the movement decreasing effects of Beast Shock. After gaining all these effects, you cast Master of Ice once. So this is another must-bring skill, right? It's basically, yeah, you're combining both the Triton buff and the Great Dragon Barrier buff, and even the Beast Shock buff of allies being within 1 block of you cannot move or guard, right? It's literally a must-bring, in my opinion. So you're going to bring Hymn of the Sacred Beast for your 3-point skill, and then you have 2 points and then 1 point, right? 2-point skill will be kind of up to you then at that point, depending on the fight. Might be Beast Shock, might be Triton to keep Triton up longer, might be Great Dragon Barrier potentially, depending on what you're facing, might also be Master of Ice. You know. And then as for your 1-point skill, once again, kind of up to you, right? Sacred Beast Aegis could be very useful at this point because it allows you to take all damage for adjacent allies. If you don't bring Triton or whatever, you no longer have that 1 guard effect, right? So you might choose to bring Sacred Beast Aegis. You might choose to bring Battle Cry, right? Before attacking, dispel 1 buff from enemies. Actually, sorry, let me take this back. Juggler's helmet allows him to bring all this, allows him to ignore skill point costs, right? So in that sense, you know, your 2 skills could be anything after bringing the Hymn of the Sacred Beast. So yeah, I mean, you could bring whatever. This is really, really confusing because Juggler has always changed skills depending on what your opponent you face. Sometimes you bring Beast Shock, sometimes you bring Faction Buff, right? Sometimes you bring Master of Ice, sometimes you bring Great Dragon Barrier. So in that sense, it doesn't really change. This is just but this skill, Hymn of the Sacred Beast, I think you're going to bring no matter what. Moving on, Yusuke. Yusuke's Awakening skill, Black Spirit Gun. The effect is that you attack a single target, dealing 1.4 times damage, with melee soldiers also attacking. If Yusuke is in his demon state, range is increased by 1. And finally, damage is increased by 30%. In addition, if this skill kills the target, you reduce cooldown by 3. Otherwise, you apply Cannot Be Healed debuff for 2 turns. This effect cannot be dispelled. So in a lot of ways, you can say this skill can replace Elwyn's Sword Soul, right? Because he can now apply Cannot Be Healed effects on the enemies, and it lasts 2 turns, giving you the opportunity to easily kill it off the target Yusuke attacks. That's pretty much it. Of course, the thing to keep in mind is this skill does not dispel buffs the way Elwyn's skill does, right? Sword Soul dispels 5 buffs. This Black Spirit Gun does not dispel any buffs, but nonetheless, incredibly useful skill for Yusuke. Pretty much another must-bring skill. You know, he can now bring both Spirit Gun as well as Black Spirit Gun, which can be very, very deadly, assuming your Yusuke does not have to bring a faction buff, right? So he can have Black Spirit Gun, and Spiritual Outbreak for a very deadly combo. Keep in mind, of course, that in that kind of situation, you need someone else to faction buff him, which would be, you know, Matthew or Gizarov, Angelica, Joshua. He does have multiple faction buffers. Alright, moving on. Angelina. Angelina's 3C skill is Neptune's Breath, and the effect is that it does AoE damage along 3 straight lines, and the span is 3 tiles. So it's a 3x3 area in front of Angelina, and the effect of this is that it knocks enemies back 3 squares. So when in water, you also have a 20% chance of freezing enemies for 1 turn. And finally, if this AoE attack hits 3 or more enemies, Angelina can act again. And this act again effect can only trigger once per turn. So this can be an incredibly deadly skill, because Angelina can be a flyer class, use Tidal Surge to move 2 more tiles, right? So she moves 7 tiles, can launch this Neptune's Breath, and then act again to potentially use, let's say, another attack skill like Ram to kill off an enemy. Right? Ram allows her to do 1.2 times damage. So it does depend on how the enemy is positioned, but in certain scenarios, you can AoE them, then kill off a target, which is just great, and break up their formation due to the knockback effect. So, I mean, there was an example of this skill being used in the How to Build Brenda video, so I'm not going to go over that again. Last but not least is Lifney's 3C, Magic Vortex. So, this skill attacks a single target, dealing 0.1 times AoE damage to the target. Okay. Now, all enemies within 3 squares of the target are transferred next to the target, and they're inflicted with -3 mobility. The target also inflicts Final Bomb, where when debuff expires, units within 2 range deal fixed damage equals to 4 times Lifney's intelligence. It lasts 2 turns, this effect cannot be dispelled, and the fixed damage cannot be negated. So what this really means is Lifney that has her accessory, that has the skill, and has aim, can charge up 3 tiles, aim to move another 2 tiles, launch this Magic Vortex skill, and then retreat back 2 tiles after that. It can be incredibly deadly, but the weakness of using Lifney would be that she's incredibly vulnerable to being assassinated, right? Just keep that in mind. But nonetheless, this skill suddenly makes Lifney very, very usable in PvP content. So there we go. A lot of new additions, a lot of very useful additions in particular, and I personally am going to get Landius, Juggler, and Yusuke right away. I'm probably going to unlock Lifney's 3C just to experiment with it, because I need to know exactly how it works before the playoffs begin. So there we have it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Nitro out.